It's so good to be with you. And I know there are a lot of you that know me, and there are those of you who do not know me. So I'm not going to spend all of my time talking about myself, my relationship with this church, but I want to tell you just a couple of stories just to let you know that this church means a lot to me. First of all, I am one of the Martins, okay? I can remember somebody saying one time, this church is just full of Martins. Well, that's the way it's been through the years. The very first time I stood up here to speak, I can remember there was a fellow named Buddy Koss that had gotten some of us in the teenage class to do a sermon. We were going to work in concert. And I was supposed to do confession. This was, the 5 steps. I was supposed to do confession, and then Kenny Howell was going to do baptism. And are the doors still back there? They're just open, right? Are those the same doors? Okay. There used to be doors in the back that had a diamond-shaped window in them. And as I got up and I spoke for my 5 minutes about confession, I didn't see Kenny up here on the front row, and I was wondering what's going to happen. And as I looked into the back, there was Kenny looking through the window at me going. So I knew what was going to have to happen. Fortunately, we had all traded our part so we would know what the other person was supposed to do. And I went ahead and concluded there. But going back before that, probably many of the dearest memories that I've had growing up here was we had a missionary that we supported named Gordon Hogan. Gordon and his wife Jane we supported for many years. And I remember as a child just being enamored with their reports on their work first in Pakistan. And I would just get right up here on the front row because he would have a slideshow, and it was like the most exciting thing in the world to me. And I think that kind of lit a fire. And for years, I, thought about that. About what they had done. And I kind of wondered what that would be like. And years later, I went to work for a church in Kentucky as their outreach minister. We went to China to visit Joshua over there at that time. And I came back and told the elders that in a year, we will be gone. I was just going to try to if that's my phone, I'm sorry. My brethren in China, see, there's one right there. They just sent me a thing. Okay, if they only knew, right? I've got it off now. So when I talked to the elders about it, we got things together. And in 2005, Terry and I went to China, began work there, and we worked there for 3 years. When we returned home in 2008, there were some situations in our life that just determined for us we couldn't go back right then. Part of it was Dad's health, and it was bad for a number of years. So this, back in 2015, we returned. And we've been working there since. Now, what we are doing at this time is we are supporting ourselves. And there are some real positives for me in that. I am not saying that we should not support our missionaries. I think we should. I think it's a noble thing. I do, and I'm not trying to toot my horn. I'm just saying there is something that you do give up when you go into the mission field. But I'm not going to tell you about all that because my life is fine, okay? But when we went there this last time, we started teaching on our own, teaching English. And you would be just amazed at how many people you can get to be interested in Jesus Christ and the gospel message just through teaching English or teaching English to their children. Especially if they see in you something that is different. They see maybe a manner of life that causes them to be curious. And I know that through the last year and a half, Terry and I we've had some struggles. She'll tell you, sometimes you just get overwhelmed by things when you do not know the language. My favorite expression is ting budang, and that just means I don't understand, or bujida, I do not know. So when you are living in that situation, I don't want you to think it's some kind of a romanticized, it's really great and you just feel that the Spirit of God is working in you mightily every day. Sometimes you do have those low times. There's just no doubt that's what happens. But the good thing is, when you are surrounded by those who have come to know Jesus Christ, and you know their lot in life, you know that it is one that is not the easy road, then that gives you some real incentive. It gives you real motivation. I don't know if I've said it here before, because I know I have spoken here since I went to China back in 2005 to 2008. But one of the things that really impressed me was when people would be coming, our brethren or just those who are curious to find out about this gospel, this good news message, they'd be taking the bus. Now we've got a subway system, so that's much better for them. But they would take the bus, and they would take the cheap bus. Now you say, why does that matter? Well, for 1 yuan, you could take the bus without air conditioning or without heat. In the summer, it was hot. In the winter, cold. But instead of taking the 1.5 yuan bus, they'd take the cheap bus. And they would ride sometimes an hour to come and to gather with us. Now, they're not walking in all hunched over and, I've got all of these worries and problems, but that they face challenges in life as well. What they really want to do is learn about why there is hope that they've never known about in the land where they live. And you start to teach, and you start to see that aha experience. And then the next thing you know, those whom you've taught years before are now leading groups. And it's a wonderful feeling to see them growing in the faith. In his prayer a little while ago, Philip mentioned the hope that we have. And I remember my father, and I can tell you right now, I was sitting right there. One night we were having singing. Wednesday night, do you still have the Wednesday night singing? Okay, the 5th Wednesday of the month. I was sitting up here on the front, and I led a song, "We Have an Anchor." And so, I just love the song, and I'm leading away. I was young. And he took me aside for a little while, and he started talking to me about that anchor of the soul, both stead and are steadfast and sure. I want to read to you from the 6th chapter of Hebrews, we'll begin with verse 17. Thus God, determining to show more abundantly to the heirs of promise the immutability of his counsel, confirmed it by an oath, that by two immutable things, and he told me that means unchangeable, son, in which it is impossible for God to lie, that we might have strong consolation who have fled for refuge, to lay hold on the hope set before us. This hope we have as an anchor of the soul, both sure and steadfast, which enters the presence behind the veil. He explained that all to me before we went home that night. And of course, that song took on a new meaning. As I said, I was young. And I have always relished that moment because it's that hope which I try to teach to others. Because I see the condition of people everywhere. People here in the United States. As an outreach minister, spent many an hour in the county prison, the county jail, teaching those who had little hope. And then I've gone to another place where many people didn't have hope. But I know right here in the United States, there are plenty of people who have that feeling of no hope. So I don't encourage you to think that you must go somewhere in far distant land in order to share that hope. You share it right here. And I want you to do that, and I want you to think about it, and I hope it's something that is truly uplifting to you, something that gives you encouragement. I have learned many things through the years from ones here, from, of course, my father, who's now passed, and I know many of you knew my dad. There have been older ones here who shared things with me that just meant a lot to me through the years. I had a tendency sometimes when I'd come down to visit with Charlie and to talk to him about things in Pinellas Park and get the history of things. And as I go away and go to a faraway place, I have all of these precious memories to take with me and to give me some strength. And Terry does as well. She's from Pinellas Park. She grew up in Pinellas Park. I grew up in St. Pete. Started out in Pinellas Park, ended up in St. Pete. But I want to share a lesson with you and try to tie it in with the things that I've described right here. If you've got a Bible, turn over to 2 Samuel. We're going to look at the 9th chapter. And I'll give you just a little bit of background on this. I've got to say something. Ed, did you put this on this lectern? Sir, we wish to see Jesus. When I worked at Glendale Road, we had this up on the lectern, okay? And a minute ago, I saw it and I just got lost for a moment because I'm like, did John Dale call down here? Okay. In the 9th chapter of 2 Samuel, we see a story about a fellow named Mephibosheth, okay? Now, we have David now as full king of all Israel. Before this, there had been lots of trouble with Saul. David's anointed, then later on, David becomes king over Judah, and now he is king over the kingdom, the United Kingdom. But here's the thing that's very interesting right here. Saul had sought to take David's life time and time and time again. David's running from him. There were a lot of problems here. But you remember that Saul had a son named Jonathan. Now, he wasn't his only son, but Jonathan and David, they loved one another as their own souls. I mean, it was a thing where they were given to one another. They had that deep respect and honor for one another. And so even though Jonathan was the son of Saul, he cared deeply about David and about David's welfare. Jonathan and Saul are killed in a conflict with the Philistines. And as that happens, then Ishbosheth becomes king in Saul's place, but things just started to take a downward spiral very quickly. And David very quickly will rise to full power. Part of this had to do with those who thought they had allied themselves with David, but David would later have some of these killed because they had killed Saul or the relatives of Saul. When David was told the news about the death of Saul and the death of Jonathan, he was greatly disturbed. He hated that. He had had opportunities himself to take their life, or to take Saul's life, and he didn't do it. He said, how can I take the life of God's anointed? All of his friends were telling him, hey, now's the time. Seize the throne. Kill Saul. He didn't do it. But he had this friendship with Jonathan that's so important to our lesson tonight and how this all goes. You see, David, well, let's just read the text here. David said, is there anyone who is left of the house of Saul that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake? And there was a servant of the house of Saul whose name was Ziba. So when they had called him to David, the king said to him, are you Ziba? And he said, at your service. Then the king said, is there not still someone of the house of Saul to whom I may show the kindness of God? And Ziba said to the king, there is still a son of Jonathan who is lame in his feet. Very interesting that he would mention that. He says, he's got a son. Jonathan had a son. He's lame in his feet. So the king said to him, where is he? And Ziba said to the king, indeed, he is in the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, in Lodebar. Then King David sent and brought him out of the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, from Lodebar. And when Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, had come to David, he fell on his face and prostrated himself. And then David said, Mephibosheth? And he answered, here is your servant. So David said to him, do not fear, for I will surely show you kindness for Jonathan your father's sake, and will restore to you all the land of Saul your grandfather, and you shall eat bread at my table continually. Then he bowed himself and said, what is your servant that you should look upon such a dead dog as I? And the king called to Ziba, Saul's servant, and said to him, I have given to your master's son all that belonged to Saul and to all his house. You therefore and your sons and your servants shall work the land for him, and you shall bring in the harvest that your master's son may have food to eat. But Mephibosheth, your master's son, shall eat bread at my table always. Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king, according to all that my lord the king has commanded his servant, so will your servant do. As for Mephibosheth, said the king, he shall eat at my table. like one of the king's sons. Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah, and all who dwelt in the house of Ziba were servants of Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth dwelt in Jerusalem, for he ate continually at the king's table, and he was lame in both his feet. Now, you could say, well, that's an interesting story, but, what is all the connection here? Put it together for us. Maybe you already have seen it. One of the things I try to show my brethren in China is the wonderful stories from the Old Testament that are a foreshadowing of the great truths revealed in the New Testament. You see, right here in this story, we see something that is so very true about us as the children of God. When David calls for Mephibosheth to be brought to him, Mephibosheth doesn't understand why, because the only thing he can think of is he's cleaning house. He's getting rid of every single person who is connected, any family members, because that was something that kings did in those days. Anybody who was a member of the household of the former king dies. So he says, what do you want with a dead dog like me? He already knew pretty much that there was nothing left for him. And when David says the things that he says, here's the thing I want us to focus on. It wasn't because of what Mephibosheth had done that he was shown this great grace. He'd done nothing. He was alive. He was in Lodabar. He had been carried away at one time, because of the situation with the royal family. But here's the thing that I notice. David says, for your father's sake, for Jonathan's sake, you will eat at the king's table. Now, you see the connection, right? You and I, we're as dead dogs before God when we were in sin. What is it that I could bring that would be so great a gift? The only thing that I can bring is my heart. And bring it to Him and realize that He is the one who has the say about whether I live or I die. But here's the other thing. When you look at what David does, he doesn't just extend mercy. Mercy would be, you won't die. He also extends what? Grace. Because now he gets that which he doesn't deserve. He really thought, I deserve death because this is the way of the kings, and, I'm a dead dog here. But he gets mercy. Much greater than that, he gets grace. And that grace says that he will eat at the king's table as one of the king's sons. Now, let's think about that for a moment. As one of the king's sons, you and me, the king's sons, the king's daughters, and we get to feast with the one who is over us all, and as Paul would say, in us all. What a great What a great thing. What true hope we then have. That anchor of the soul. So you ask me, okay, so why did you go? Well, not everybody and his brother is going to load up and go to the People's Republic of China. And I understand. And I had a friend tell me one time, hey, we've got plenty of people here need to be taught. How come you have to go over there? And I said, because I've been doing it here. Now I'll go do it there, and I'll leave the rest up to you. We've all got something that we can do in the kingdom of God. Right here, and China, Africa, Mexico. The world is just waiting for a message of hope. And so when Chinese ask me, why do you do this? I say, because I've got hope. I've got hope. And I want you to have it as well. And it's for Christ's sake, isn't it? It's because of Christ that we can sit at the Father's table. You know, when we come together and we break bread and we drink from the cup, there is the remembrance of the one who has made it all possible for us. And so when Jesus, he gave the command, he instituted the Lord's Supper, there was that part of it that we should remember the great sacrifice on our behalf. But there's another thing you forget. Paul talks about us being the one bread. You see, we're the body of Christ. And so not only do we have all the benefits that come with the terrible death of Jesus Christ on Calvary's cross, but we also have the benefit of being brothers and sisters in a common faith. I'm watching the thing because I do have a tendency sometimes to go on too long. That's basically my message. I could tell you a few other stories. I saw, okay. I've told this one before. I'll tell it again, though, to those of you that don't know this. I was baptized here. M.P. Winkler baptized me many years ago, about 49 years ago. And I remember watching him preach one Sunday morning, and he was fired up. And he drew his hand up, and he came down right there and broke his hand. That night, he had it all bandaged up, in a little sling type of thing. And my dad asked him what had happened, and he said, Bob, I hit that lectern too hard. And I kind of laughed a little bit. I kind of turned away. But this church holds many precious memories to me because it's where that fire started a long time ago. And that hope has been something that I've been able to carry with me, and I know that many of you have done the same. I mean, I see Glenn back there, and I think to myself, Glenn, you could tell so many stories on me, please don't. And this has been a place that's always been near and dear to my heart. But I'll tell you something, much more than just the fellowship of meeting at a place and then leaving is what's been imprinted upon my heart and upon the hearts of so many of you. And I hope and I trust that you will take that precious message of hope with you each and every day, because it will sustain us. I promise you it will. It sustained me. Now, I haven't offered the invitation yet, and I'm going to do that very thing. There might be somebody here tonight who feels like, I don't have hope. I just don't feel. Or somebody who is a Christian who says, you know, my faith started to waver, my hope, sometimes life seems hopeless. I understand. I do. Because I think that Satan is always at work trying to defeat us by saying, there's no hope. Hey, this one that, you believe died for you, well, no, we do. We have hope. And the great thing about it is the Christian can look at leaving this life, at death, as simply a graduation. Just before Dad died, back in January of 2015, one night I was with him and I said, graduation time's here, isn't it? And he said, yeah, it is. And he said, I haven't done this before. And I said, no, but it's going to be great. And it will be. And one day we're going to all see one another in that place where there are no more tears, no more long sermons. I'm kidding. But it'll be a time when we can see the true blessedness of the hope that we've had, because our hope will be realized. It'll no longer be something that we are looking forward to, but now we have realized it. There might be somebody here tonight who doesn't have Jesus Christ. I can tell you now there's no greater friend that you could have than Jesus Christ. I've believed that through the years, and I continue to believe it right now. And if you are someone who's feeling lost because you don't have Christ and you understand, I need to make that confession of Jesus Christ as the Son of God and repent. I need to have a change of life because I believe in Him. I believe that He is the one. Then I would invite you to come forward tonight. We can take care of you because, as Brother Winkler used to say, the water is warm, the clothes are prepared, and so we invite you to come. If you have problems in your life that you need the prayers of your brothers and sisters, please come as we stand and sing this song of encouragement.